road, shall we? All right, all right, all right. It is Monday at 11-ish Mountain Time, which means that it is time yet again for another exciting episode of This Week in Space. I am your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm a tarot reader, astrologer, mental health counselor. I offer tarot readings and astrology readings. I also do astrological coaching. And if you happen to live in the land of enchantment, I'm a licensed therapist here. And yeah, every Monday at 11-ish, I like to get in the tubes of the internet to tell you about the astrological weather of the week, to keep you informed, help you to know whether to bring an umbrella or take a Xanax or what the vibe in the celestial spheres is bringing down here to spaceship Earth. So thank you very much for tuning in. Before we jump into this exciting edition for the last waning dregs of 2025, a couple announcements. I'm going to be co-facilitating a retreat in Greece. I think I'm now doing the one in May where we go to Delphi and talk about oracular dreams. This is a week-long retreat. And if you want more information on that, you can follow Sarah Jane's Dreaming on the Instagram or go to dreammysteries.org. And what else? I do a astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report. I was doing that for a number of years and then took a little hiatus over the summer so I could live a life. And now I'm back. I'm so back, baby. And that comes out ideally for the lunation. So I've got one in the works for the Cancer full moon, which we'll be talking about a little later in this report. And then, yeah, I just put out one for Christmas, the Melee Reports Holiday Extravaganza. You can find that on my SoundCloud at Camp Wizard Camp. There's a link. I'll put a link in the show notes on the YouTube and the podcast. And also, you can, I don't know, find that in the link in my bio on Instagram. So yeah, that's all the advertisements that I have. And so without further ado, we can jump into this week in space. And Gina Maria saying no audio on the Instagram. Somebody holler at me if that's true. Okay, while I'm waiting for that, let's talk about this week in space for December the 28th, in the year of our Lord, 2025, to January the 4th of 2026. Okay, and Jesse Brown, what up? Jesse Brown says there's audio. Good, we're good to go. Um, yeah, man. 2025 has been quite a skull kicker, huh? Be happy to leave this one behind. 2026 is also kind of spicy, but 2025 we had a lot of planets changing signs, which brings big shifts in the energy of what's going on, and change is dysregulating, change is difficult, and also like real talk, this year kind of sucked. But, we're moving on to ideally bigger and better times. We do have a Saturn Neptune conjunction coming up in February. That'll be exact February the 20th. That got within like 13 minutes of a conjunction back in July of this year, right when Saturn stationed retrograde. And so some of the themes from the summer should be coming back up during late February and coming to kind of a culminating point. And I mean, that's been building and developing, and what that will look like, anyone's guess. But yeah, that's kind of a big one. The Saturn Neptune conjunction happens every 36 years. We'll be talking more about that in the future. Never you worry. But this week and over the month of December, we've been getting sort of little sketches and touches of what that might look like. But we will have the outer planet shifting signs again because they've all retrograded back into the signs that they've been in for a little while. So we'll have Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus all changing signs again. But this is not the first dip in like it was in 2025. And so we have a little bit of a foundation or an understanding of what that might feel like and what that might look like. So it may be a little less jarring. But again, change is difficult, change is dysregulating, and practicing, being with yourself, regulating your nervous system is probably going to be helpful. And like one of my teachers says, and I love this, is we practice meditation when things are good, and so when things are bad, we know what to do. And I think about this like a fire drill. You practice what you're going to do in case of an emergency when it's not an emergency. So when it is an emergency, you sort of have that embedded and embodied knowledge of how to show up and how to find the exits. So you're not just running around and freaking out. So uh, little bit of wisdom to start this off. Practice the things that you know are supportive and helpful for you when things are okay and you don't feel like you need them. So when you do need them, you know what to do. Anywho, I want to start out this week with a brief overview of some of the themes that have been unfolding over the past weeks and the last days of 2025. So, the last few days of 2025 are characterized by Mercury moving through the gauntlet of the Saturn-Neptune square. Saturn and Neptune have been posted up in the last degrees of Pisces since they stationed direct. And they're kind of acting like threshold guardians at the very edge of the mutable signs. And all the personal planets had to contend with these guardians as the exited the mutable sign of Sagittarius and entered into cardinal Capricorn. So first into this initiation was Mars, which feels pretty fitting. Mars is active and has a lot to do with courage and also impulsivity. And so, I think about Saturn and Neptune, kind of like the guardians at the gate, like the sphinxes in the never-ending story. And Mars is like, yo, whatever, I got this. I'll show these guys. And so Mars squared Saturn on December the 10th, and then Neptune on December the 14th before entering Capricorn the day after, December the 15th. Next into the square was the Sun, who squared Saturn on December 16th and Neptune on December the 20th before moving into Capricorn the next day, which marked the winter solstice. Venus followed behind the Sun, squaring Saturn on December the 20th, which is the same day that the Sun was squaring Neptune. And then Venus came in to perfect their square to Neptune on December the 23rd before moving into Capricorn on Christmas Eve, December the 24th. Now it's Mercury's turn to face these threshold guardians. Mercury will be squaring Saturday on Tuesday the 30th, and then Neptune early in the morning on New Year's Day. It's about 6 something a.m. Mountain Time. Then they will leave Sagittarius to join the Sun, Venus, and Mars in the mountains of Capricorn in the afternoon of January the 1st. And then all of these planets will be kind of activated during the full moon on January the 3rd. So that's a brief recap of December and the tense relationships that all of these planets had with Saturn and Neptune as they moved across the threshold from mutable Sagittarius into cardinal Capricorn. It may be valuable to kind of consider your experience through the month of December for several reasons. All of these planets squaring off with Saturn and Neptune are considered personal planets. and thus they tend to have a bigger impact on us as individuals and our personal experience of life. Mars deals with our drives, appetites, and ability to take action. It is what we are willing to fight for, as well as the courage required to assert ourselves. The sun deals with our sense of self, what we aspire towards, as well as our inner spiritual wisdom and our ability to shine our light into the world. Venus deals with our relationships, how we relate to others, as well as how we relate to ourselves. Venus also deals with love and beauty and all of its power, potential, and terror, and our values, what we are drawn towards and what we are repelled by. So, as all of these planets move through this square to Saturn and Neptune, these aspects of ourselves and our lives have been tested and in some ways reconfigured. Whoa, hold on. I got to quit my notes. Pardon me for a second. Let me just vamp for a second while I figure this out. So, as all of these planets are kind of moving through these threshold guardians, they're drawing things to the surface and kind of checking us in certain ways, which, is not necessarily the most comfortable thing to experience. And so I'm so back. And so, as all these planets move through the square with Saturn and Neptune, these aspects of ourselves and our lives have been tested and in some ways reconfigured. Parts of ourselves may have been hardened or acquired a greater weight through the square to Saturn, while other aspects of ourselves may have become dissolved or felt like they were slipping away or even lost at sea with no clear direction as to how to progress as they move through this square to Neptune. And the energies of Saturn and Neptune have a lot to do with our boundaries. Saturn is our limits and structures of the individual self. Who am I and what is mine versus what is outside of me or other than me? And Saturn is really invested in holding this boundary and making sure that I am safe, I am good, I am me, I am differentiated from what is outside of me. And real talk, I think that this is kind of a helpful thing to have in a human life because we are all here having our individual experiences. And it is important to have a container to hold that. Whereas Neptune is dissolving and brings with it the longing to merge and assimilate into something larger than the individual self. So there is this tension around wanting to create and hold our boundaries that help us to maintain this differentiated sense of self as separate and safe from the chaos of the outer world. And the longing and desire to kind of dissolve these boundaries that separate us so we can merge with something bigger than us and come into a deeper sense of connection with other people, the outer world, and I believe ultimately the spirit. Again, this tension has been playing out throughout the month of December as we have needed to set boundaries that feel right for us and then watching them dissolve or be washed away and then needing to rebuild them, kind of like castles made of sand. And Mars, the Sun, and Venus have moved through this square. We have gotten to kind of experience this in different ways in ourselves and in our lives. And I'm saying all of this because now Mercury is entering into this hard aspect, which completes the series of squares to Saturn and Neptune, at least until June, when they will all square them again. So, Mercury is our minds and how we process information, can be the constant inner chatter of our thought processes or insights that suddenly arise. So, as Mercury moves through these squares to Saturn and Neptune, there's the opportunity to make some sense of what has been unfolding over the past month. We may have gotten some information at a somatic or spiritual or even relational level, but now we may get a chance to articulate the changes and challenges we have been going through. Mercury helps us to process our experience on a conscious level. Our minds are incredibly good at making up stories to provide context and to give things meaning. This can be incredibly helpful in that it can help us to give a name to our experience and to the feelings that we are sitting with so that they are not just nebulous things floating around. We can be like, oh, that is that. Okay, now I know that is that. Now I can work with it. Can help us to understand and metabolize what has been unfolding and provide a little clarity around how to show up and how to move forward. However, the mind and all of its amazing storytelling abilities can also be a hindrance in that it takes us out of the felt experience of the moment. It is either moving far out ahead, trying to solve problems in the future, or running way back into the past and trying to understand or reconfigure or dwelling on events of the past. It is kind of tricky to coax it into staying present in this moment and being with what is happening right now. And so, as Mercury enters this gauntlet on its way out of Sagittarius, which is the sign of Mercury's detriment, we are being asked to sit with what has been coming up over the past month. And maybe not to make sense of it, but maybe to just be with it and to stay curious about what is arising for us in each moment. And I think this will help us to actually gather the lessons from the last days of 2025 instead of leaping to conclusions or needing to know what it all means, which is definitely Mercury and Sagittarius trait. But I think that can kind of get in our way of an actual embodied understanding when we are sort of leaping to conclusions and being like, okay, I have this little bit of information. This is what this must mean. Okay, that is the gospel now. And, Sagittarius can be kind of dogmatic. And so Mercury in Sagittarius, again, our cognitive processes can gather that little bit of information and then become super dogmatic about the story that it's telling. So we just want to be conscious of that. And if we move too quickly into meaning, we might lose the delicate thread of our felt experience that leads us into the bigger picture, which will only be able to be understood when we gain a little bit of distance on the closing of this year. The other thing that is important to consider is that Saturn and Neptune will form their conjunction on February 20th of 2026. Right now, they're about 3 degrees apart, which is well within orb of conjunction. So as all of these planets have been moving through this square aspect to Saturn and Neptune, it has been giving us a preview of some of the themes that their conjunction might bring up in February. And again, these are personal planets. So we are thinking about themes that are arising within us, and we are always in relation to larger systems, the external world, culture, society, global concerns, friend groups, family systems, etc. But this is how we are processing it and experiencing it in ourselves. And so, again, as Mercury moves in as the last planet to perfect this square to the building conjunction energy of Saturn and Neptune, they may provide some insight and cognitive understanding to what this conjunction may bring. So, this week is a good time to pay attention to the images and ideas that arise and not to grab onto them and be like, this is how it is, but to just notice and see what is arising within the self, what is arising in the mind, what is arising in the dream life, because this might provide some clues as to what will unfold later in February when these planets come in to perfect their conjunction. And we also might want to pay attention to the data that we are picking up from our experience of the world around us. Mercury may help provide some information around how the energies of Saturn and Neptune will manifest when they finally form this conjunction in late February. And yeah, and Mercury, I think we live in a very visual culture and a culture that is very kind of solar in the sense that we are fixated on what we can see, what we can know, what we can touch. But also, Mercury is gathering all of the data from all of our senses all of the time. And so, if we maybe like tune out of the visual sense and the desire to know and allow ourselves to just receive the information that is arising in our systems, what we were picking up from all of our other senses that also might provide some good information that can help us to find a way forward. So, all that being said, let's talk a little bit more about the specifics of Mercury squaring Saturn. So, on Tuesday, December the 30th, Mercury in Sagittarius will square Saturn in Pisces at 26 degrees and 4 arc minutes of those mutable signs. So, Saturn is pressure and weight. It is restriction, limitation, as well as dedication, maturity, and gravity. With Mercury square Saturn, it gives a little extra weight to our thoughts and our communications. Saturn asks us to sit with what's difficult and uncomfortable. Saturn is all about solitude, while Mercury is all about kind of commerce and exchange and information exchange and being out in the marketplace and striking deals. But Saturn deals with like poverty and isolation and solitude. So again, these are at cross purposes in a square, and part of our work is to figure out how to navigate that desire to be in the flow of exchange and information while also holding the desire for solitude and to be with ourselves. And Mercury is a trickster, and they have a way of running out and sneaking around and escaping difficult situations, just like our minds can escape into fantasy or storytelling to sidestep the challenge of being present with what is happening in the now. And this can go so far as spiraling out on possibilities and problem solving difficult or uncomfortable situations. And this is also a way of trying to escape what is actually happening in the present moment. Even if we are, obsessing about something we did in the past or trying to like really find a solution for something that we're afraid of in the future, which are not pleasant experiences, this is also a way of escaping what is happening right now in this moment in my body. And so Saturn asks us to sit in this moment and to be with it and to accept it. Saturn asks us to take responsibility for ourselves. And part of taking responsibility for ourselves is taking responsibility for our current experience. And part of doing that is just learning to be with it. And yeah, that sucks, but I don't make the rules. Um, and so, um, in this square to Mercury, we are also being asked to take responsibility for our thoughts and where they're going and how we direct them. Mercury is always gathering information and processing our experience. However, we can easily get lost in the mental processes of Mercury, believing that if we just think about it long and hard enough, we can figure it out. With this square, maybe it's not about figuring it out. Maybe it's about learning to be with it, whatever it is. The information that Mercury gathers isn't just visual and mental. It's all of the information of our senses that we are picking up all the time. And when we turn our awareness towards the sensory data we are receiving through our bodies, we are better positioned to stay present with our current experience instead of kind of seeking to escape it through the commentary that our minds are making up about what is happening. So Saturn Mercury context can also show up as being pretty critical. And this can be really helpful if we're working on projects that require a critical eye. But it can be kind of less than fun if we turn that critical attention inward upon ourselves. And Saturn can show up as our inner critic. In this square to Mercury, we may notice the inner critic kind of coming up this week. If this is the case, see if you can turn to this part of yourself with some compassion. So, I've been reading this book, In the Absence of the Ordinary, by this person, Francis Weller, this gentleman, Francis Weller, who wrote a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow, which is fantastic. One of my favorite books of all time. And this book is pretty incredible. It's a collection of his essays. And it's one of those books that I've been reading it, and everybody that I meet, I'm like, oh my God, you got to read this. I just and I referenced it last week, and you know what? I'm gonna reference it again because it's that good. And he has this essay in it called "The Generous Heart: The Gift of Self-Compassion," and he says, through self-compassion, we are offered the possibility of new beginnings. No part of us releases in a state of judgment. The overly critical mind creates a state of contraction, whereas compassion softens and makes possible a state of beginning. And I think this is really applicable to this square and also to this week, including the full moon in Cancer. And so Saturn is definitely a planet of constriction and contraction. And with Mercury, it can create this overly critical mind. And so, to counteract this, we can choose to show up with compassion for ourselves and to learn to kind of soften that pressure and weight that Saturn brings to our current experience and our internal worlds by just, turning that compassion in on ourselves, the compassion that we would offer to a friend, somebody that we care about, somebody that we love, which oftentimes we negate for ourselves. And this is a practice, but the square gives us a great opportunity to practice the skill. And again, we learn these things so that when we are in crisis, we can use them. They arise at moments when we need them. We practice them when things are good. So when things are not so good, we know what to do. On a more practical note, with this square, Saturn is restrictive. So another component of this transit may be that communication is limited or restricted. There may be misunderstandings or miscommunications, where we may feel like retreating into solitude instead of being social. So when we're in communication with others, conversation may tend towards subjects with weight and gravity and not be as lighthearted as we may want, especially as we move towards New Year's. Or words may hold more weight than we intended. So just be mindful that be mindful of the gravity of what you say and you know uh, just think about it a little bit before you blurt it out to avoid misunderstandings. So Saturn square to Mercury may also impact New Year's plans in restricting options or ideas, as well as closing down avenues of communication, which might create some confusion during the New Year's holiday and celebration. And on Thursday, which is New Year's Day, and leading up to it, which would be New Year's Eve, Mercury will be in square to Neptune, which may create confusion and some mental fog. So you may want to double and triple check your reservations. Excuse me. And confirm your plans because these hard aspects to Mercury may leave us a little befuddled and lost. And if we can remain present with our current experience and allow ourselves to have some compassion for ourselves, we'll probably be all right. So let me check the comments real quick and then I will get back to this. Okay. All right. Bringing us to Thursday, January 1st. Happy New Year! Happy New Year, everybody. We have to kick off the new year, we have Mercury in Sagittarius squaring off with Neptune in Pisces. This is going on at the spooky old anaretic degree, 29 degrees and 30 arc minutes of these mutable signs. All right. So Mercury Neptune contacts tend to be pretty confusing and kind of foggy. Neptune is a planet of fantasy, and Mercury deals with our thought processes and how we kind of process the world. In a square, both of these themes are at odds, and they're kind of vying to run the show. And this can lead us to making up stories about what's actually happening or getting pulled into fantasy scenarios. So with Mercury square Saturn, that had us kind of focusing on reality and what is happening in the present moment, coming back to our felt experience. And with Mercury squared to Neptune, the pendulum swings all the way the other way and can have us lost in dreams or fantasies. And I think the ideal is to kind of find the balance between these two ways of thinking. How do we allow our minds to wander and conjure visions of a better future for ourselves and our world as we move into this new year while staying tethered to our present reality? This is a challenge, but Mercury has the ability to hold multiple things if we allow them to. Neptune can kind of create illusions. If we're not careful, we can find ourselves pulled into some unhinged fantasy about a person or people or situations. And again, we want to take what we learned from Saturn and practice coming back into the present moment and checking in with what is actually happening right now. And New Year's is another liminal moment in the turning of the wheel and the changing of the year. And this is a time for setting intentions for the future, as well as letting go of old stories from the past. And I think that Mercury's relationship with Saturn and Neptune during this time is kind of helpful for both of these processes. Saturn, ruling death and decay and time, allows us to shed what no longer serves us and what we no longer need to hold so it can be composted and we can move into a new year feeling lighter with more capacity to receive what is available for us. And Neptune is connected with idealism and dreams. And this allows us to really envision the life that we want to live as we cross the threshold into a new year. May be helpful to spend some time on New Year's Day, kind of daydreaming and allowing ourselves to envision the life that we would like to step into and the world that we would like to wake up into, and to see if we can do this without spiraling out into negative fantasies, with which Mercury, Neptune in hard aspect can cause us to do. Neptune can bring up a lot of anxiety. We want to allow ourselves a kind of healthy dose of fantasy, daydream, and revelry without becoming unmoored or lost in some mirage that our minds conjure for us. So just keep checking in with the present moment and what's actually happening instead of getting caught up in the story you are telling yourself about what's happening. And again, Neptune is confusing and foggy and will confuse conversations and communications, also business dealings. So, yeah, again, with Neptune square Mercury, as with like Neptune square everything, double check what you are signing. Maybe don't sign anything until, I don't know, a couple days into the new year, because things that seem too good to be true probably are, and Neptune can be pretty deceptive. So also make sure that you are able to clarify and clear up misunderstandings to the best of your ability. This transit will also probably impact your New Year's plans as well as your New Year's experience. So if something, again, seems too good to be true, it probably is. Also, substances may hit a little harder under this transit, and inebriation will increase the confusion, which it tends to do. And in a very confusing time when our minds are very sensitive and open, substances may have more impact, and they may increase the fog and confusion. And if you're into that, more power to you. But take it slow. And so, yeah, when we're ringing in the new year, just know your limits, know when to say when if you're planning on partying, like test your drugs, see how things hit before you take more. Things are kind of weird enough this week. So, yeah, know your limits and be careful not to overdo it if you don't want to. If you do, just do it safely, okay? And yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. So, also Thursday, January the 1st, we have Mercury entering the cardinal sign of Capricorn. This will happen a little later in the day at 2:10 p.m. Mountain Time. And so last week we talked a lot about the archetype of Capricorn. how it's connected to understanding the landscape where one finds oneself, and practical understanding of the terrain that we are existing in, as well as the rules and the structures of the environment. With Mercury entering into the Saturn ruled sign, they move out of sign to the Saturn and Neptune square. And this influence of those aspects will still be in effect for a couple more days. So, yeah, maybe don't sign anything until like the fourth or the fifth. Now, Mercury is practicing communication and cognition in practical ways now that they are in Capricorn. So we are kind of learning the structures of the areas in which we are operating and how to put our thinking and communication skills to good use in practical ways in order to help us to achieve our goals and to gain recognition for the things that we do well. Mercury in Capricorn is kind of committed to the bit. They are dedicated to what they put their minds to and can have a singularity of focus that can be really beneficial to the long-term goal as long as they remember to keep the mind open to other possibilities and not get too narrowly focused. And when we do that, we can cut ourselves off from other opportunities or areas of interest. Mercury in Capricorn, kind of a straight shooter, have the ability to tell it like it is, which I appreciate, to explain and express things in pretty grounded and practical ways without like flowery language or innuendos. They're just like, yo, this is what's up. That's it. And that can be incredibly helpful. And there can be an economy of language here and the ability to get right to the point without a lot of beating around the bush, which may be very welcome after all of these squares to Neptune that we have been experiencing over the past month. So Mercury's time in the sign Capricorn, which lasts until January the 20th, may also help us to ground some of the information that we have been processing during all of these Saturn Neptune squares. And it can help us to put that information to practical use. This can help us to better understand what has been asked of us during the waning days of 2025 and to gain some insight into what we do with that. Mercury in Capricorn also helps us to understand the structures in which we are operating. What are the mental structures, and how can we work within these structures to support ourselves and to create what we need? What are the rules and forms of communication that we are utilizing? And how best to get to our how best to get our point across or communicate what we would like to say? And what are the exceptions to the rules? And how can those exceptions to the rules serve us? So this is a time of understanding the mental terrain where we find ourselves, so we can begin charting a course based on our current conditions to get us to where we would like to go. Oh, what's up, Jeff? Happy New Year, my friend. All right. This brings us to Friday, January the 2nd. We have Chiron stationing direct in Aries. This is going on at 22 degrees and 35 arc minutes of cardinal Aries. So, Chiron is a wise old centaur who is also known as the wounded healer. They stationed retrograde on July 30th at 27 degrees and 9 arc minutes of Aries. So since the end of July, they have moved backwards about 5 degrees. And during this time, they have called us to look inwards and consider the parts of our internal world that need care and compassion, that are calling out to be heard, held, and healed. The idea of the wounded healer is that one cannot help others until one has done their own internal work. And we can only bring others as far as we have been able to go ourselves. Chiron also unlocks our ability to support others based on our own experiences with certain wounds that we have been called, or in most cases, forced to face in ourselves. And through that experience of self work, we are able to support others in their healing and growth processes. However, the healing is never done, and the core wounds that Chiron activates are never fully healed. This process is like an onion. You just keep peeling back the layers and crying. That's Chiron in an onion right there. And with Chiron's retrograde, we have been asked to peel back another layer of our internal experience and cultivate the courage to be present and compassionate with what we found there. Chiron's time in Aries is all about cultivating the courage to be with the wound and to lean into the places where it hurts, as well as having the bravery to be vulnerable and to use what we have learned in order to both support others and to engage in our own self growth or our own healing processes. Aries is about initiating, igniting, exploring, moving out from the point of origin. As a sign that begins on the spring equinox, it is very much connected with growth and the struggle to break through the limits that have held us as we developed, like a sprout fighting to break through the seed casing which held it as it germinated. And this is applicable to Chiron in the sign, is both the wound or the response to the wound, which created the container in which we developed a level of safety that allowed us to grow and develop and germinate in the depths of the soil of our souls. And also the courage to grow past these containers and seed husks that have become too small to contain what our souls long for over time. And and just like many seeds require being scorched by fire or frozen by frost in order to germinate, so too our souls oftentimes require challenging experiences to initiate the growth process. So Chiron stationing direct in Aries is calling us to develop the courage to step outside of these seed husks that have held us and to push through what has been developing deep in the earth of our psyches and to begin to take the lessons that we have been learning through our inner reflection and begin the outward movement into the world where we can begin to embody these lessons through practice, to integrate them through action. With Chiron direct, it's time to bring what we have learned about ourselves into our awareness and into action. It's time to shed the seed husk that have held us and to have the courage to risk change. The archetypal psychologist, James Hillman, who I love you, Jimmy, talks about our relation to the core wound of Chiron and the gifts that it can bring through what is known in alchemy as the pearl of a great price. So Hillman says, the alchemists had an excellent image for the transformation of suffering and symptom into a value of the soul. A goal of the alchemical process was the pearl of a great price. The pearl starts off as a bit of grit, a neurotic symptom, a complaint, a bothersome irritant in one's secret inside flesh, which no defensive shell can protect oneself from. This is coded over, worked at, day in, day out, until the grit one day is a pearl. Yet it still must be fished up from the depths and pried loose. Then, when the grit is redeemed, it is worn, and it must be worn on the warm skin to keep its luster. The redeemed complex, which once caused suffering, exposed to public view as a virtue. The esoteric treasure gained through occult work becomes an exoteric splendor. To get rid of the symptom means to get rid of the chance to gain what may one day be of greatest value, even if at first an unbearable irritant, lowly and disguised. Love that. And again, it requires us to have the presence and capacity to sit with this irritant, this complaint, this expression of the wound. As Chiron moves back and forth through the last degrees of Aries, this wound is worked and reworked. And then we must have the courage to bring it from the depths or to pry it from its shell and the bravery to wear it against our skin. to allow this part that once felt so vulnerable to be exposed and displayed as a virtue and a representation of the great work that we have undergone. I also want to note that healing doesn't happen on a linear trajectory. It is a process which is often cyclical. And we can see this in effect through Chiron's movement back and forth through the chart, as well as their 50-year cyclical orbit through the zodiac. And although I've been talking about growth here, I'm talking about the soul's growth, which happens in strange and subtle ways. And while we can mark progress in our healing journeys, as in our ability to look back and see how far we've come, or how our responses and reactions have changed over time, or how our capacity to show up for ourselves and others has increased based on the work that we have done. And all of that's great. But I think that we should look to process and not progress as what is of greatest importance of our experience of healing. And returning again to Francis Weller and his essay on self-compassion to close out this little bit on Chiron stationing direct in Aries, Francis Weller says, I don't see the soul moving in a linear way from point A to point B. Sometimes it moves downward or sideways, sometimes it regresses, and other times it holds still and does not move. Progress is one of culture's most cherished fictions, but it can do great harm when applied to the life of the soul. As soon as we are not moving forward or progressing, we feel something is wrong and that we are failing. So we redouble our efforts. What self-compassion offers us is the space and breath to listen and take notice of how our soul is moving at this moment. What is it asking of us to pay attention to at this time? And maybe this is the invitation of Chiron stationing direct and standing still in the sky for a moment. Maybe it is an invitation to just take notice of how our soul is moving in this moment and to listen to what it asks of us. Maybe that's all we need to do. Just notice, just listen, and turn our attention to what our souls are asking of us. All right, this brings us to Saturday, January the 3rd, which is the full moon in Cancer, which is occurring at 13 degrees and 1 arc minute of cardinal Cancer. This full moon occurs at 2:02 a.m. Pacific time, making that 5:02 in the a.m. Eastern time. So, a couple aspects are pretty active during this full moon. We have the moon in Cancer opposing Venus and Mars in Capricorn, who are both pretty close to conjunct the sun. And then the moon will go on to conjunct Jupiter, who is exalted in Cancer about 12 hours after the full moon culminates, and we'll go on to square Chiron and Aries later in the day. And so the full moon is a time of culmination where the seeds that were planted during the last new moon, which occurred in Sagittarius, and that I made a great radio show for, by the way, which you can check out if you haven't. It's called the Melee Report. It's the best. Anyway, the seeds that were planted during that new moon have now ripened and come into view in some way. This full moon occurs in the moon sign of domicile Cancer. Now the moon is at home and has all of the resources of being in their house, as well as all of the sort of challenges and drawbacks of home ownership, right? If the dishwasher breaks, the moon's got to go out and fix it. You know, they have to take care of the roof. They have to take care of the responsibilities of the home and their domicile, but they have all of the stuff that they like there. So Cancer asks us what we care about and where do we want to direct our emotional energy? Where do we want to place our care and invest this emotional energy? Cancer is a sign of cardinal water, so it talks about the initiating source of water or emotions. It is the wellspring that is the origin of our emotions and our capacity to care and where that capacity care springs forth from. And Cancer reminds us that what we care about creates a state of vulnerability. And so Cancer has the shell because the things that we care about are worth protecting. The crab shell of Cancer protects our vulnerability and the things that are important to us. The moon has a lot to do with belonging and how and where and to whom we belong. With this full moon, we can ask ourselves, what are the conditions and situations and people that allow ourselves to feel vulnerable, that allow us to have that sense of belonging and connection? Because vulnerability is a key component of connection with others as well as with ourselves. And vulnerability can feel really unsafe and really uncomfortable and can bring up some big emotions. So again, we can consider those spaces and places and people that help us to form that shell to make us feel safe enough to be vulnerable so that we can be in connection, we can be in belonging. And I think that this is an important component in the feeling of belonging, the sense of vulnerability. So, with this full moon, we are considering the shell, the container, that which we can pour our care into and that holds and contains it, as well as the substance of that care and the delicious, buttery, vulnerable crab meats that live inside. One of the big questions this year with Jupiter moving through Cancer, which is a sign of their exaltation, is how do we expand and extend our circle of care? And how do we create a shell or a container that can hold all of this care and not just our close friends and family, but others as well? How do we hold and care for a global community, all of our human relatives, as well as our plant relatives and our animal relatives and our mineral relatives? How do we hold the sort of our disincarnate relations, the spirits that populate the unseen world? Can we increase our capacity to care to include all of these beings? And you may say, what an order, I can't go through with it. And that's totally all right. It's maybe more of a practice or a mental exercise or just something to consider. And maybe something to consider is, can I just expand this a little bit further than this immediate circle? And so this question of emotional capacity comes to the forefront. What is my emotional capacity and how do I know when I'm maxed out? And also, can I increase this emotional capacity just a little bit, just a millimeter or an inch? Can I increase this circle of care? And what would that even look like? This also might be a time of emotional release. The full moon is a time of culmination. This is a time when feelings and emotions come to the surface so that they can be realized and also released. And our emotional palate can be cleansed. This is a time when we can release old feelings and emotions that we have been sitting with, that have been brewing below the surface, so that we can have more space to care for what we actually care for, instead of holding things in the death grip of our crab claw and fixating on them. Because Cancer loves to do that. Cancer will be like, this? Oh, hell no. Hate you. You you crossed my boundary in some way and like now I'm never letting it go. Like they have a death grip for sure. And so, how do we let go of these resentments or the old emotions that we have been fixating on that we're just like grinding in our crab claw? And it's cool if you're doing that, but also like maybe you can let it go. Maybe there's better things to hold on to, you know what I'm saying? And so I just want to talk about a couple of the aspects that are pretty active in this full moon, because the full moon is opposed by Mars, Venus, and of course the sun, which is the thing that makes a full moon. All of these in a pretty close conjunction in Capricorn. And this opposition can be both beneficial and challenging, as oppositions tend to be. So let's talk about the challenges first so I can kind of sign off on a high note. So start with Mars. Mars is hot and activating, so we may find that we get activated on an emotional level during this lunation. This can feel pretty uncomfortable. However, it provides the opportunity to sit with these feelings. Are you picking up on a theme this week? And to use the courage that Mars brings to lean into what is scary or uncomfortable. This also can help us to clear these feelings. The moon has a lot to do with the body. So if things are coming up for you during this full moon, if there's like big emotions or feelings that are arising, try to recognize the physical sensations. Is it a tightness in the chest or in the belly? See if you can be brave. Turn towards yourself with care and self-compassion and give yourself what you need in this moment. And this can be as simple as just placing a hand on your chest or on your belly and telling that part of yourself that, yo, I got you. You're safe. I'm here for you. Just like an ideal parent would when a child was stressed out or scared or feeling dysregulated. And the moon is a maternal archetype, it is a parent archetype. And so being able to turn towards these scared or dysregulated parts from this maternal or parenting place, like a wise parent, like a skillful parent, like the ideal parent, being able to hold them and let them know that they're all right. Mars can also be impulsive. So the feelings that may be activated during this full moon may cause us to kind of act out impulsively. And this may be a call for some attention. This may be a call from an internal part for some attention or the desire to get rid of these feelings because they're difficult and uncomfortable. And again, seeing if we can just cultivate the courage to just be with what is. Also, the opposition to Mars may make us feel like we are under attack, which may cause us to increase the density of our Cancerian shell or whip out our crab claw and snap at some things. And there is nothing wrong with that. However, just be aware of what you are doing and why. We don't want to just shut ourselves down or close ourselves off. Maybe better to find the space in your life where you feel safe enough to be vulnerable with yourself and to practice being with whatever is coming up and not just walling yourself off or shutting down or getting into conflict because, some feelings are arising. And if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But also check in first and be like, yo, what is actually happening? Why am I feeling activated? Can I turn towards myself before shutting down or lashing out? So, the opposition to Venus can bring up feelings of belonging and this idea that other people are living the life that I want to be living, that other people are more beautiful or having more fun or did it better on New Year's. And this is an example of judging our insides by other people's outsides, judging our, tender, vulnerable crab meats by other people's shells, which, in my experience, has never worked. And I don't think it ever will. However, we can use this idea or of beauty or an idealized life not to beat up on ourselves, but to inform what we want in order to build and create these things for ourselves and help us to cultivate a vision of what we want to live into. It's important that we develop this vision based on our own value system and what we truly care about, not what we are supposed to care about or what the media or an algorithm tells us we should care about. This is really a time of tuning into our own internal knowing based on our feeling state, which oftentimes has more valuable information than what our eyes take in or what our minds tell us. Something to consider is how do I want to feel when I'm living the life that I want to live? Not how will that compare to other people's lives, or how will that look compared to other people's lives, but how does it really feel in my body and in my heart? Now, for the beneficial part. The moon gives birth to our dreams that are held deep. Oh, hold on one second. Uh, So the moon's opposition to the stellium in Capricorn provides the opportunity to give these dreams that have been kind of developing in our internal worlds form and to begin to shape them and bring them into being in our physical world. The sun illuminates what has been developing and growing within the lunar world of our emotional body and the realm of our feeling being, and it helps to bring it to a ripened state at the full moon, what has and helps to illuminate what has been growing in the darkness of our psyches. And now these come to a state of fullness and fruition. And Mars allows us to take action based on the dreams that have been developing in our internal worlds. Mars in Capricorn is exalted and has the sort of guidance of Capricorn, which helps their actions to stay focused on the task at hand and their energy directed towards the long-term goal. This gives us a great ability to initiate the work required to begin building these visions that have been growing within us and taking the practical steps required to bring these dreams that we're developing as feelings or sensations over this lunar cycle into physical form. Venus helps us to approach this project with love and to create a form that is beautiful and pleasing to us. Venus also helps us to make sure that what we choose to create is in line with our value system and that we are building is really what we want to put our care and energy towards. And with that, my friends, that is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you so much for tuning in. I apologize to my friends on Instagram for getting cut off. I think I might have gone on a little long, but hey, we've come to the end. So yeah, before I take off, if you are interested in getting a tarot or astrology reading to help you navigate this next exciting year, you can hit me up. You can find me on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard and just shoot me a DM and we can schedule something, or you can go to my website, campwizardcamp.com, and book through there, or drop me a line and we can figure out a time to meet. Other than that, I hope you all have a great and safe New Year's, and I will see y'all in 2026. And until next time, be good to yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.